14th of August, 2354. The Federation finds itself mired in scandal and political upheaval. The Cardassian border conflict, which has lasted for 7 long years, only now finds itself at the forefront of Federation politics, with the internment scandal forcing the resignation of President Marie Berthier. Those who would replace her now must confront the issue of the Cardassian conflict and face increasing public pressure to end it by any means necessary. By contrast, the last 7 years of war have been at the heart of Cardassian society. Victory above all else has become the singular goal of the Central Command, even at the expense of their own people. Now, with the Federation embroiled in its own internal affairs, Grand Gul Elir Lukat plans to strike Starfleet while their attention is diverted. Little does he realize his enemy is already moving to strike first, as the formidable Commodore Nechayev stands ready to strike first in the historic Operation Phoenix. With her undeniable involvement in the internment scandal and a likely change in Federation policy around the Cardassian War, Nechayev was keenly aware that her days in the frontier were likely numbered. Therefore, she sought a decisive outcome before a new president could be inaugurated, giving her less than 4 months to end a war which had lasted 7 years. Since the end of Operation Shadani the previous year, Nechayev's task force had grown from 20 ships to over 35, yet she had failed to secure her true objectives, those being the new so-called Brahms line of ship classes, such as the Challenger, Niagara and Freedom classes, which used the same technology as the highly capable New Orleans, but were significantly larger and more powerful. Unfortunately for Nechayev, Starfleet Command remained committed in its conviction that these were ships of peace and exploration, and should not be introduced to the galaxy as a warship, despite their impressive tactical capabilities. By contrast, the Cardassians had no such intention of holding back, with some 50 ships deployed to the frontier, and Gultar Obrek's regime had been cemented after a series of political purges. This also brought the Guard's Order to prominence, which was to be equipped with the latest and most advanced Cardassian equipment and weaponry, as well as being exclusively loyal to Gultar Obrek and regarding themselves as the elite within the Cardassian military, often resulting in tensions with their Central Command counterparts. However, for the time being, Grand Gul Lukat believed he could defeat Starfleet with the forces currently at his disposal. His plan arguably reflected his inexperience. Attacking in 2 concentrated prongs, the system of Panora and Hakton, he would then advance to Umoth, splitting Nechayev's fleet in 2. He believed he could retain the element of surprise by converging the component squadrons en route to the attack, this largely arising from a poor understanding of Federation sensor technology, which would allow them to see the Cardassians coming well before they could rendezvous with the other squadrons. In any case, Lukat's plans for his offensive, codenamed Operation Skria and Vesh, Scorpion Sting, scheduled to begin on August 25th, were shattered as Nechayev commenced Operation Phoenix on August 15th. Nechayev conceived Operation Phoenix as a multi-phase plan to inhibit, disrupt, and defeat Cardassian activities on the frontier. Phase 1 commenced with a series of raids not against the Cardassian systems, but against Cardassian ships. Forming the rank and file of the Cardassian fleet, the Ekoor had only a cruising speed of warp 6, and the Kulanor only faring slightly better at warp 7, potentially pushing warp 8 in emergency. Compared to their Starfleet counterparts, these were sitting ducks. The workhorse of Starfleet, the Excelsior class, had a significant advantage, cruising easily at Warp 8 and able to reach as high as Warp 9. Developed in the 2380s, the Excelsior class was originally intended to be a quantum leap in starship design. Utilizing a cutting-edge transwarp drive, this propulsion system operated on the principles of not only warping space, but time as well. As a result, a complex transwarp computer system had to be developed to hold the two constants in balance, allowing greater speed without significant detriment to the crew. This complex system eventually proved impractical. However, it did yield significant developments in conventional warp drive, but critically in navigation systems. During the 2280s, the threat of Klingon invasion loomed large in the minds of Starfleet, and as a result, the Excelsior class was designed with provision to identify and intercept Klingon battlecruisers. The desynchronization caused by transwarp drive meant the traditional sensors were unreliable, as the ship may arrive at the intercept point too early or too late. Therefore, part of the transwarp computer control was dedicated to real-time tracking, allowing them to, with a single reference point, calculate the most probable course of an enemy ship, using this in conjunction with transwarp drive to execute a perfect interception. While the transwarp drive itself was replaced on Excelsiors, this system remained intact, allowing the Excelsiors to intercept Cardassian patrols and shipping beyond conventional sensor range. Phase 1 lasted less than 3 weeks, but succeeded in its objective, interdicting Cardassian movements throughout the frontier, isolating individual squadrons. The USS Cairo rose to prominence, capturing and disabling 11 Cardassian cargo ships, destroying 1 Ekoor and 3 Kulinors. The other 8 Excelsiors between them captured or disabled 42 cargo ships, destroyed 5 Ekoors and 14 Kulinors. In Starfleet, this period became known as the Fortnight of Silver Starlight, but the Cardassians named it the Fortnight of Fear. Thus, it achieved its desired effect. No Cardassian captain dared go on patrol without being supported by the rest of his squadron, and supply ships were forced to travel in large, cumbersome convoys with a significant escort. On September 2nd, Lukat, undeterred, ordered Operation Skrir and Vesh to begin, playing right into Nechayev's hands, who was confident that she could not only repel the Cardassians, but carry out a decisive counterattack against vulnerable systems. Almost immediately after commencing Operation Skrir and Vesh, the flaws were apparent. Lukat set out from Ashilan with 5 ships and would rendezvous en route with the squadron from Jiraiya. Yet this left the system undefended. The squadron at Ararat had orders to reinforce. Unfortunately, the commander disregarded these orders, fearing that they would only be interdicted by Starfleet. Meanwhile, the squadrons of Volan and Soltok did attack, albeit with a mere 5 ships. With so few ships, Lukat had little hope of achieving his objectives, and whilst being several hours from the rendezvous point, they were intercepted. Lukat's squadron was intercepted by the Constellation classes USS Hathaway and USS Victory. Hathaway led the intercept, firing a full volley, provoking Lukat, who ordered 2 Kulinors to ward her off. With the 2 Kulinors on the trail of Hathaway, Victory made her move, attacking from a 6 o'clock vector, taking the Cardassians by surprise and knocking one of the Kulinors out of warp, causing heavy damage. Rather than support his comrade, the 2nd Kulinor retreated to the sanctuary of the squadron. Soon after, the Constellations made a second attack, with Victory pressing the formation from a 7 o'clock vector, allowing Hathaway to cut across, making a lateral run from 1 to 7 o'clock vectors, knocking out an Ekoor. Still, Lukat pressed on, leaving his comrades behind. Only after another Kulinor was knocked out did he realise that he was in a vulnerable position and ordered a retreat. Meanwhile, the Royal Squadron, consisting of 3 Miranda-class ships, the USS Majestic, USS Mughal, and USS Qing, saw an opportunity. The Miranda class was launched in the 2270s, concurrent with the Constitution refit. Originally it was intended as a light cruiser, but it saw its class demoted as larger, more powerful ships entered service. By the 2350s it was classed as a frigate. With a length of 243 metres, a width of 150 metres and a draft of 63 metres, she proved considerably more agile than the Constitution and could keep pace with the similarly nimble Klingon Katinga. Her basic armaments consists of 8 Type 7 phaser banks, but this can be augmented by different dorsal modules. The Miranda was the first Starfleet ship to incorporate mission-specific modules, proving their utility. Captain Korsakov of the Majestic saw that the Ararat squadron had failed to support the attack, leaving a gap in the defences all the way to Solosos. Royal Squadron seized the opportunity and charged for Solosos while the Cardassians were preoccupied with their main attack. The plan initially seemed to be a success, with Royal Squadron arriving in the Solosos system unopposed. Unfortunately, Nechayev and the rest of the fleet had been so preoccupied with repelling the Cardassian attacks that she didn't receive Korsakov's report till several hours after he had gone forward, and as a result, the gap that Royal Squadron had gone through had since disappeared, and they were now cut off in Cardassian territory. Fortunately, Royal Squadron was a well-rounded formation and could hold its own. Majestic was a standard Miranda variant, mounting a torpedo launcher and twin heavy phasers. Mughal was amongst one of the scientific variants, mounting a large dorsal sensor array, allowing them a longer sensor range. And the USS Qing was the patrol variant with greater speed and agility and a pair of long-range heavy phasers. Soon enough, the Cardassians noticed the intruders and resolved to destroy them. Only being Miranda class, they would be unable to outrun the Cardassians, and so Captain Korsakov ordered Royal Squadron to stand and fight. The first Cardassian attempt to dislodge Royal Squadron occurred on September 3rd at 0213 hours, with 4 ships from Ararat, 1 Ekoor and 3 Kulinors, dropping out of warp and finding that the Royal Squadron was nowhere to be seen. Therefore, the Cardassian commander adopted an open order search formation. At 0233, one of the Kulinors searching in the vicinity of the Solosos gas giant came under fire from the USS Qing, which had hidden amongst its moons. The second Kulinor attempted to support, but themselves were ambushed by the Mughal. The first Kulinor was destroyed, and the second heavily damaged. When Majestic appeared from behind another moon to fire on the Ekoor, the Cardassian commander, shaken, ordered a retreat. At 0947, the Cardassians returned, having repaired and regrouped with reinforcements. They moved in close order, sweeping the moons of Solosos 6, until eventually the USS Qing made a break, retreating towards the inner asteroid belt. The Kulinors followed without hesitation, continuing the pursuit, leaving the 2 Ekoors exposed, and soon Majestic and Mughal emerged from the asteroid belt in a pincer movement to attack the Ekoors, heavily damaging it and causing the Cardassians to retreat yet again. Only after reinforcements arrived did the Cardassians try again, at 1621, attacking with 2 Ekoors and 4 Kulinors. The Ekoors led the foray into the asteroid belt, as their more powerful weapons were more effective in the closer ranges of the asteroid belt. This played directly into the hands of Royal Squadron, who had mined the entire asteroid belt. When one of the Ekoors struck a mine, it caused a chain detonation, engulfing and destroying one Ekoor and disabling the second, and heavily damaging the Kulinors, which retreated. They returned on September 3rd at 0116 with a Brettnock support ship in tow, hoping to recover the disabled Ekoor. Royal Squadron seized upon this opportunity, attacking and harassing the Kulinor escort while the Brettnock painstakingly worked to recover the Ekoor. Royal Squadron ensured that this came at a great price, heavily damaging 2 Kulinors and destroying another, causing the Cardassians to retreat once again. Unfortunately, in the course of the battle, Royal Squadron had exhausted its photon torpedo complement, severely limiting their ability to fight at range and deal heavy damage. Yet Captain Korsakov refused to give up. The next Cardassian attack came at 0952, with a squadron from Omekla. 3 Ekoors and 5 Kulinors dropped out of warp above the inner planets. Outgunned, Royal Squadron utilised the Sunstrike tactics. By positioning themselves close to the Sun's photosphere, Royal Squadron was able to stay unseen by the Cardassian long-range sensors, allowing them to perform a series of ambushes against the Cardassians, disabling a Kulinor and heavily damaging 2 other ships. And while the Cardassians had retreated again, Korsakov knew that they would be back and that there was little left for them to do. Their weapons were heavily depleted and their crews exhausted after more than 24 hours of continuous fighting. Fortunately, at 13:37 hours, a relief squadron led by the USS Cairo arrived to reinforce them after breaking through near Jiraiya, securing the Solosos salient for the time being. However, Grand Gol Lukat resolved to retake the system and repel any further Federation assaults in that sector. Nechayev realized that the Cardassians likely expected further assaults from the Solosos salient, and so she played into these fears, ordering ships stationed there to take an aggressive action against the Cardassians, as well as sending false communiques suggesting that Starfleet did in fact intend to attack through the salient. In reality, this would have been impossible, since the Cardassian garrison remained firmly entrenched on the surface of Solosos 3, impeding any large-scale build-up. Yet, it had the desired effect. The Cardassians concentrating at Ararat and Ashilan. Then, on October 7th, Nechayev exploited her deception, seizing the weakly guarded Volan system, encircling the remainder of Cardassian forces on the frontier. In total, Nechayev had trapped some 20 Cardassian ships and 10,000 troops in this pocket. Rather than engage in a head-on confrontation, allowing the Cardassians to use their concentrated forces, she instead elected to wait and blockade Lukat into submission. During the next 2 months, Nechayev defeated 7 separate attempts by the Cardassians to break out of the pocket, only further depleting their meagre numbers and supplies. By early January 2355, she expected to receive the Cardassian surrender at any day. Unfortunately, on January 2nd, she was relieved with immediate effect by Admiral Nakamura, who had been sent by the newly elected President Tvek, who was an anti-war candidate. The Cardassians, having learned of this, planned to use this to their advantage, and on January 3rd commenced Operation Priatar, or Firestorm, and this would be spearheaded by the Butcher of Setlik III himself, Legate Nasat of the Guards Order. Spearheading this attack would be the newest and most advanced ships in the Guards Order, the Kulinor and Ekoor Mark IIs, not only sporting superior sensors and a new dampening field which served to sap energy from particle weapons, they were also equipped with active recharging shields. Previously, the only way for a Cardassian ship to recharge its shields was to completely lower them. With the Mark II series, they could now recharge them while remaining up, provided that they did not take damage. This was critical to Nasat's plan. In the past, the Badlands had been an impenetrable obstacle. With the violent gravitational anomalies and plasma storms, it had hitherto been impassable for Cardassian ships. No longer. Using his new shields and dampening field, Nasat was able to move through the treacherous region, and was in prime position when he began his attack on January 3rd, launching simultaneous attacks on Solosos and Volan with 20 ships hidden in the Badlands. Simultaneously, the squadrons from Ararat and Ankana attacking Jiraiya and Beltani, while the remaining forces in the pocket pushed to break out. This sudden attack on all sides significantly shook Starfleet, and Admiral Nakamura struggled to get a grasp on the situation. Events were occurring faster than he could follow, and he was overwhelmed with multiple reports and requests for reinforcements. Unfortunately, Nakamura, bombarded with so much information, confused and conflated a lot of the information given to him, and as a result, led to a confused response. Everywhere Starfleet was in complete disarray, Everywhere, except on a small section of the pocket perimeter between Solosos and Ashilan, stood the USS Renegade under Captain Tryler Scott. Along her, the USS Rutledge and the Cheyenne-class USS Awahi and USS Rapid, who regrouped under the command of Captain Scott before moving to intercept and engage Lukat at a point designated Sector 22 Sigma. After having been the victim of a warp speed interception, Lukat had learned from his experiences, and upon seeing the inbound ships dropped out of warp to fight in a position of his choosing. For he knew something that Scott did not. Time was on his side. Scott dropped out of warp to find Lukat with his fleet of 12 ships in a defensive formation near the edge of the Badlands. Captain Scott engaged, opening fire with a torpedo volley from the Rutledge and Renegade, while Awahi and Rapid moved to flank the Cardassians. Lukat responded by adopting a defensive diamond, placing his Ekoors around the perimeter to defend the weaker Kulanors, and so the Cheyennes found no easy prey. This surprised Scott, who in the past had found that this was normally enough to provoke the Cardassians into reckless acts of bravado. Yet even now, as the foremost Ekoors began to lose shields, they remained stubbornly in formation, only eventually deploying into line, the purpose of which became clear as Legate Nasat emerged from the Badlands with 5 ships, outflanking Scott. Only then, with numbers in their favour, did the Cardassians push, overwhelming and destroying the USS Rapid and forcing Captain Scott to order a retreat. Unfortunately, Nasat's Kulanors were close on their heels, eventually disabling the USS Rutledge, although Awahi and Renegade were able to recover most of the crew before jumping to warp. It took more than a week for Starfleet to recover, repelling an attack on Traken on January 14th, after which Legate Nasat, now overall commander in the region, called for a ceasefire, one Admiral Nakamura readily accepted, given the reasonable terms, and Nasat was careful not to push for too much, as he was acutely aware of the poor economic situation on Cardassia which had been created by the war. Logistically, the Cardassians would be unable to support another campaign until 2360 at the earliest. At the same time, Nakamura, and by extension the anti-war lobby in the Federation, were simply content with peace, albeit a faux peace, one which neither party fully believed in or fully trusted, a peace which could crumble at any moment and plummet both sides back into the abyss of war.